Welcome everybody to our regular AMA. This happens twice a month on Thursdays. This fourth Thursday, which today is the general AMA, so we can ask any topic that we want or discuss anything that interests us regarding BrightID. We don't have a special guest or special topic on these fourth Thursdays, so that's what today is. And yeah, looks like we have a small group joining us today, but sometimes people trickle in later. But welcome everybody. It's nice to have you here. Do we have any questions? Did anyone come with any questions in mind or topics?
I have a small random one.
Yeah, please.
So there's been a discussion about there's some revamping of the website happening, and there's been discussion about updating the partners section and changing to the apps tab. And one of the things is Rabbit Hole. So Rabbit Hole previously used BrightID. As we understand it, they're currently not using BrightID. There's talk about removing them as a partner, removing them from apps. And I'm trying to think through, both specifically and more generally, how that makes sense. So if you go to apps.brightid.org, you see the top users of sponsorships. They remain this number 2 user of sponsorships. They really paid for those things. Part of the benefit of sponsoring them is that you get to be on the top of the apps page. The fact that they are not doing it anymore does not at all change the historical fact that they did. So on the apps page, based on everything we said, they still belong there despite the fact they're not like currently actively using BrightID, is my opinion. And I'm just sort of like curious to explore it with this specific example, but also how it generalizes how we should think about that. What belongs as a partner? What belongs in the apps page? What belongs in the apps in the app? Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting topic. Let me pull up the apps page so we can see what that looks up like. I'm gonna share my screen so everybody can see what that looks like. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully there's like nothing in any one of these one of these tabs that has like sensitive information. I have to be careful about that. It just looks like just weird stuff that I've been reading. Okay, so yeah, I mean, Rabbit Hole is still number 2 on the list of sponsored users. They sponsored a whole bunch of users. So that has historical meaning that they did that they brought in so many people to BrightID. I mean, that's awesome that they did that. I kind of don't want to forget about the fact that they did that.
Right, removing them here would be wildly inaccurate.
Yeah, because then there'd be this gaping hole. It's like, what? Wait, there's all these sponsored users, and
right,
where are they? Yeah, who sponsored them?
It is a factual matter that they assigned that number of sponsorships, they used that money, and that many are verified. All of those things are like true. What Rabbit Hole does going forward is meaningless to the fact that those things being true. And BrightID said, as part of like one of the reasons that you would want to buy sponsorships and sponsor users is that you would be on this leaderboard to help advertise your app. Now, Rabbit Hole still wants to get users,
sure,
regardless of whether they don't now care if that user is BrightID verified or not. But we have a community of 70,000 people, whatever it is. Some people do occasionally come here. I view it as it's still a good thing for Rabbit Hole if someone clicks on that link and ends up there and becomes a user of theirs, despite them not needing BrightID as a gating mechanism.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the benefits of them sponsoring users, is that they could get visibility. So why not? I mean, let's keep them up there until other apps. I mean, let's just keep them up there forever, and eventually other apps. Eventually, right now, 28,000 sponsorships gets you near the top, but in the future they'll get pushed way down to here, and there'll be some other new apps, newer fancy apps that will be up at the top, and that's fine. So I have no reason. I mean, there's other apps here. Like I went to the Ether Discord earlier this year, and it was like a ghost town. So I don't know what's going on with them. I mean, we don't. If someone asks, if Rabbit Hole said take us off, sure, we can take you off because uh, we're doing this to give exposure to your app, and if you don't want that, we can take you down. But they haven't asked us to take them down. So, it might be confusing to people who might think, okay, this is a BrightID application that I can use with BrightID. So we can think about more whether we want to indicate in some way that you can no longer link your BrightID here, so that people don't get confused. Like, where do I link my BrightID? I don't
Right. I
see
mean,
that. I'm not seeing it.
there could be a button there that said inactive or something.
Yeah, so we have to think about that, how to do that in a graceful way that doesn't look bad for Rabbit Hole, but doesn't confuse users. So yeah, we can think about that some more. But yeah, good, yeah, interesting topic.
Yeah, they'll naturally eventually go down the list, right?
Exactly. Yeah, as some other apps become more popular, they'll just start dropping down the list, and you can see there's some at the bottom of the list that those apps may not even work anymore for all we know. But we don't remove them. Maybe we should.
So if there were 100 apps there, I would want to not show them all on the main page. Like you could click buttons to like expand to see the ones lower down. But I think it would be reasonable to, like, on the main page, only show the top ones. And most people will never click the button to like expand to see more. And it might even be like a multiple times that you expand to see more. If you go to Etherscan or Google or whatever, like it shows you a certain number, and then at the bottom there's buttons that you can click to see the rest of them, and most people never click the buttons to see more.
Yeah.
But they're there on Google. You could click that button forever. There's no like, there's no end to the number of times that you could click the button.
Yeah, so right now I'm typing in Keybase because here's something that Bitsika said, and Bitsika's not here. It's the middle of the night where he is, but it said we had a member of the public report and ask why we have it, meaning Rabbit Hole, in the app registry, even though Rabbit Hole says they no longer require BrightID. They were misled and had to ask in the Discord to find out. I agreed with them and told them it will be removed. So I think, I don't think Bitsika can decide by himself that it should be removed, but I understand this is what we were talking about. We don't want to mislead people. So if there's some way that we can, because I don't want to cause frustration. People like, where do I link? I've looked all over Rabbit Hole. I don't see where to link my BrightID. I can't figure it out. I mean, that's probably what they were asking in the Discord. So we need to help them understand that you can no longer link your BrightID here. This is just to show historically what Rabbit Hole did. Okay, so yeah, we're having a discussion about what we should show for historical apps on the applications page. Yeah, to avoid yeah, we want to show I mean, okay. So I will finish typing this out. You guys move on to another topic.
Continuing just a little bit more on this, it is not inconceivable that when BrightID gets better, when Aura launches, when we are more confident in our verification system, when we can do it more efficiently, whatnot, that an application that went inactive might choose to become reactivated because the service is now compelling to them. I understand, right? We weren't serving the needs of Rabbit Hole. That's fine. Perhaps we can in the future. They certainly shouldn't lose the credit for what they did in all those sponsored users or sponsored users. So yeah, just using this specific example to think about the general. How do we treat things like this? All right, we can move on.
Yeah, so.
I guess one thing
Go ahead.
I could use clarification on, forgive me, because this is sort of a fundamental thing about all this stuff. So there's the page with all the apps and it lists the number of users. The users are sponsored. Is that the lexicon here? So what does that mean exactly?
Do you want to
Right, so-
explain that, Philip?
Yeah, within BrightID, in order to have your in order to have your verification checked, you have to that particular BrightID has to be sponsored, or you can't get, or an application can't get back an answer to a verification question. This needs to happen one time per lifetime per user. We don't care who sponsors a user, but somebody has to sponsor a user in order for questions to be answered about that BrightID. Because creating a BrightID is completely free and completely at the action of the user. Anyone can download the BrightID app, and as soon as you do that, as soon as you take an action there and create an account, you have created a BrightID. It's just not valid for use until it's sponsored. The nodes won't
What
answer
is
questions.
no, please, I really appreciate a really specific and complete answer here, because this is so fundamental and important. So then the other thing, what is it like, what does it mean to sponsor a user? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so there is a thing out there called an SP token, sponsorship token. And when an application sponsors a user, step back once. These tokens exist. They are assigned to a context, which is basically an application. Once they have been assigned, that's it. Like they're like credits in the bank for that application. User comes along, when they try to check for a verification, provided the application has a sponsorship assigned to it, one sponsorship is burned for that user requesting verification, and then they are able to request the verification. If you try to request a verification and they're not sponsored and you don't have a sponsorship assigned to that context, then the verification request will fail because it needs to be sponsored before you can like move on to that step. Any application can sponsor users. So if you were trying to use an application that didn't have any sponsorships, you can go over to any other application, get sponsored there, go back to the application you wanted and use, because it only has to be once per lifetime per BrightID, but somebody's got to do it. The reason that exists is because there needs to be funding perpetually sort of for the infrastructure of the public good that is BrightID. And that's the mechanism that exists. May not have been a perfect mechanism, but that was the concept, and still works today.
So there's these tokens, and then the apps on that page have purchased the tokens from BrightID.
They haven't necessarily purchased them.
Okay.
They've had SP assigned to their context. Anyone can assign SP to any context. So I have a bunch of SP. So when there's applications that I think are interesting that want to use BrightID, I have a number of times assigned my SP to their application to make it just simpler for them. That can be both as I've done that early on when they just want to try it out and it's kind of a pain in the butt to get sponsorships. There's some complexities. So here, I'll just assign 100 to get you started so that doesn't have to be a roadblock to an application getting started. There have been other times where the application was willing to buy sponsorships. They had just run out and suddenly their users couldn't get through, and I wanted to help fix the immediate problem. So I assigned more SP to that. You can also imagine some application that was a public good that didn't actually have any mechanism or governance or ability to assign sponsorships to itself. They could just ask the community, hey, please do this to support us, because this isn't an easy thing for us to do. We just need it to be there.
Interesting. I think I'm getting it.
Right. So you could, so for instance, someone has to sponsor you, you're a user. You could sponsor yourself. The app could help you sponsor yourself. We've had apps that have done that in the past, where you actually pay for the sponsorship. They collect a fee and let you sponsor yourself. The app could just pay for it, sponsor you. The app could say, you've already got to be sponsored. So you take care of it, you figure it out. And that could be going to another app. So the app could, for instance, it could say, here's our partner app, Gitcoin. Like go to Gitcoin Passport, get sponsored, and then come back here or something like that. So there's different ways that you can get sponsored. But at the end of the day, everyone should be sponsored. That's what it comes down to.
And so if I'm sponsored by an app, that means that that app has burned an SP token for me.
Exactly.
Okay. And they did that because I made an account on their app, basically.
Yeah, that's the most likely reason, yeah. Because
Okay.
you've shown to them that you're going to be a user.
And that process necessarily involved my BrightID, right?
Yes, you have to be verified to be able to get. You have to be verified for an app to request that the app sponsors you.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
So BrightID needed some way to pay for infrastructure over a long period of time, sort of on a perpetual basis. In most cases, in most of the rest of how things work, you would expect the customers to pay for that, and like people would think initially users. It is a small fee. It's supposed to be $1. Currently, it's even less than that. Collecting that cost from each user would be challenging. How do you get that payment? And also, maybe there's some people in low-income areas where that would be a barrier to them joining, and we don't want money to be a reason someone is incapable of using BrightID. We thought it was a simpler, better arrangement to have the applications who are more centralized and would do a bunch of users and get the benefit of BrightID to fund that cost. So applications fund that cost so that users don't directly have to do it. It is sort of, we think of the applications being the customers of the BrightID service in that case, and they're just much better positioned to pay that modest cost on behalf of their users.
I get it.
Right. So we've got 80,000 people have been sponsored, but they've been sponsored by 15 entities. It's way easier to have 15 customers than 80,000 customers, and eventually have 1,000 customers instead of 1 billion customers actually paying.
Yes,
thing.
this is all making sense and why it's called a sponsored user. That makes a lot more sense now.
And for the most part, a user really should never have to think about this. Any application that's seriously using BrightID will have sponsorships, plenty of sponsorships assigned to it. They're low cost, they're civil protected anyway, because now at this point, and this was not always true, but at this point, if a user is only sponsored if they meet the verification required by that application. So whatever civil resistance level they have selected. So at this point, almost everyone uses meets, which is a pretty low bar, but they could say, hey, you got to be Aura Silver in order for us to verify. That's our lowest level of verification. So therefore, if you don't have Aura Silver, you can't get sponsored by them because it only happens if you would meet their verification standard. So they don't have to worry about people like maliciously spending like bots can't come in and grief them and waste their sponsorships, because if a bot goes and creates 1,000 BrightIDs, they're not going to have Aura Silver. So you don't have to worry about being griefed in that civil way. And we felt that even if there was some application that didn't want to sponsor people, it sends them over to some other application to do it. We thought, hey, a user just showed up at your site and went through some actions, and that application can put whatever hoops that they want in between the user showing up at their web page and actually getting sponsored.
Right.
So,
And actually, based on feedback from apps, we're simplifying this process and making it so that because most apps would rather not deal with approving every sponsorship request. Most apps would just not even have to think about it. Like if someone says they want this app to sponsor them, that should just happen without any sort of process from the app itself. It simplifies what apps have to do to integrate with BrightID. So what we're going to be offering is an ability for someone who has the proper verification to choose within the apps list in BrightID which app they want to sponsor them, and then it just happens. And if the app doesn't like that, they can maybe do something else or have like stricter requirements of what the user has to do. But based on what I've seen apps wanting, I think most apps will want to do that. They'll just want to basically, if you need to be sponsored and or you join BrightID because there's a specific app you want to use, you pick that app from the list, you get sponsored. The app didn't have to do anything other than see that you picked them, and then you get sponsored. I think that should be okay in almost every case.
And we have never
Cool.
seen an example of an application that actually had a problem paying for sponsorships from a business standpoint. They might have run into technical issues and whatnot, but no one's like, hey, I'm unwilling to cover this cost. It's such a small cost for the benefit that is being offered to them. You know, civil resistance at $1 per person per lifetime, and a bunch of it, like, you don't have to do all of them, because if some other application sponsored that user, then you don't have to. So a bunch of people use both Gitcoin and Rabbit Hole and Unitap. Only one of those entities had to pay, and we figure that that will spread between the applications, and kind of nobody's left holding the bag. And if one application is like always being the one that sponsors them, they're probably huge and getting a lot of value out of BrightID. Or if they're like, we hate BrightID, we're unwilling to do this. Okay, you cannot have sponsorships assigned, but then your users are going to have to go jump through another hoop and go somewhere else.
I see. That's a very nice little system to keep users on your page.
But really, right, we don't want users to even think about sponsorship. It would be our preference that users don't even know sponsorship exists, and the flow can happen such that they don't even know that they just show up. They say, as long as they're verified. So right now, if you go to Meets and get your verification, and then you go to Unitap, you connect your BrightID. You don't even know that you have been sponsored by Unitap. It didn't ask if you wanted to be sponsored by Unitap. You just go, and as part of the flow of trying to link your BrightID, when you link the BrightID, it comes back, hey, is this user sponsored? The answer is no. Boom, sponsored, verified, linked, done.
I dig it. Very cool. Thank you. This has definitely been this is an Evan asks everything, whatever that abbreviation is.
No, this is great. It's good to have someone asking questions.
EAE.
There we go.
On that note, welcome Satara, welcome Milton. If you have any questions, please either raise your hand or write them in the chat, and we'll answer your question.
Yes, please.
And
Or
let's,
Evan will keep asking things.
so
I mean,
I have a topic that interests me somewhat. Did we already discuss our experience with the Gitcoin grants beta round? I think we discussed the passport experience, but did we discuss the overall experience? What was everybody's experience with that? I found it frustrating. I found the high gas to be a barrier for myself.
yep.
Given the amounts that I usually donate to different projects, the fact that I would have to pay separate gas for 3 different categories made it feel unworkable to me to make my standard donations that I make to Gitcoin grants. So I didn't do as much as I wanted to.
Yep.
How about you guys?
I would say they need to, and I fully believe that they are working on doing this. They need to offer donation options on other chains, on L2s. They used to do that. I'm sure they intend to do that again. Just haven't gotten there yet. But that problem would go away on a very inexpensive chain. I mean, even in L2, it would still be a problem to have to do it for each round. Is that what you call them?
Yeah, I think they call them
rounds.
rounds. Yeah.
I donated on at least 3, maybe 4 different rounds and had to do a transaction. And we saw it was abundantly clear that the fact that the rounds didn't cross each other crushed participation in all the rounds except the open source round. So, there were the open source round, the top projects got thousands of votes. And in the smallest rounds, the top ones got dozens of contributions. That's a crazy divergence. I think it's far from ideal. I think the different rounds is much more important in how the grant pool funding works, and isn't important to the people. Like the rounds, in my mind, it's more like I think of it as like tags instead of folders. It's Gmail versus the folder system. Tags, I just think would work much better for the people actually making the donations.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because I think the people making the donations don't really care so much about what round they're in. I think the round distinction makes sense for people that are donating to matching pools. It's
Yep.
like, I want to donate to this, but that we don't have. I mean, we can hide that distinction. We can bury that distinction for the donors, the people who are making the donations. They don't need to know that. That's not important to them. And so I agree with you. And like a unified experience, like I got all these ones, I searched them by tag, I have my other filters and ways that I have of finding the ones that I wanted. I found the ones I wanted, I added them to my cart, do a unified checkout. Hopefully it doesn't, I mean, worst case scenario, it asks me to sign 5 transactions because they were my things in my cart were spread across 5 different rounds, but ideally it would just be 1 transaction.
Even that, I think it's important that Gitcoin figure out how to have that checkout experience be smooth for the user. Yeah. I don't care how much work they need to do behind the scenes to make that work from the user standpoint. You put everything in your cart. So when I go to Amazon, right, I put a whole bunch of things in my cart. Those products are scattered all over the country in all different warehouses. Sometimes I do an order and it's going to come in 4 different boxes on 4 different days. But for me, I did one thing. I clicked buy, and it all shows up at my house. I'm a nerd, so I actually look, and I try to minimize how many boxes are going to come, and sometimes I was like, oh, I get a $3 digital credit if I combine these. Oh, this thing I need right away, but these things I don't need right away. I bet the majority of Amazon purchasers don't even really stop to look. They just click right through, and they just They let Amazon manage it because Amazon is amazingly good at managing that kind of thing. Their logistics, mind blowing. This is not nearly as complicated as the logistics for Amazon. Yeah, I don't see any reason that all the smart people at Gitcoin won't be able to figure out a way to allow you check out once. You know, even if that meant there was some kind of proxy where it's like, look, I owe $46. My $46 goes to this contract, and then it spits it out to the other 5 places it needs to go. But I should be able to just do 1 transaction on my end, even if they need to then send out 5 transactions. They can pass it. They're smart. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, I also have confidence in the Gitcoin team. And, you know, I'm glad to see that they're doing so well. It seems like, I mean, there's been times in this last so-called bear market where it seemed like, oh man, there's budget cuts. I mean, recently the fraud detection team got cut and rolled up into another team. But I look at how much money is allocated to, let's say, Gitcoin passports, and seeing that it's like you know, $2 million a quarter or something that they're spending on improving Gitcoin passports. So I mean, and then the Allo, which is what is their code name for what we're talking about now, and that protocol, there's a lot of money being allocated to it, and you know, there's good people working on it. So I have no doubt that this is going to, yeah, that they're going to resolve this pretty soon. Yeah, and speaking of funding of a commons, I wrote an article and posted it to my blog, which is on Mirror XYZ. If you look for Mirror XYZ, Adam Stallard, you can see it. But I wrote this article that talks about different ways that you can fund a commons. And I mentioned the Gitcoin way, and the way that I mean, like, compared to BrightID, they have a lot more money than we do. So in some ways I'm envious of what they did. I think it worked out really well for them and their upfront funding, because there's different things. So we talked about sponsorships, right? So sponsorships, I think, are a great sustainable recurring way to keep things rolling for a commons. But then there's this other issue, which is how do you raise upfront money? Like a startup has a lot of options available to them, a standard startup. A lot of them require basically, I kind of think of it as bringing on baggage, but like venture capitalists talk about adding value. It's like, well, no, if I sit on your board, I'm actually adding value to your company because I have these connections. And so it depends on how you look at it. But I don't think that that's really appropriate for a commons to have someone sitting on a board that's like bought a bunch of shares that is going to give them dividends for the rest of time. So there needs to be a different funding model. And what Gitcoin did was really cool. I'll share my screen, but what Gitcoin did was they had an exit to community that they did. And so I was reading this book by Nathan Schneider, who I got to see at ETH Denver. He's done a lot of work for establishing governance and defining your community and stuff like that. But he and his team at the university where he works wrote this exit to community primer back in 2020, and cool. It has Vitalik likes it too. Everyone should like this. But anyways, I mean, Gitcoin kind of followed this playbook. They got a grant from a startup, but instead of saying like our goal is, or they got a grant from Paradigm, right? Am I right about that? Anyways, but when they got not their grant, they got VC funding. But when
they did a VC round led by and predominantly funded by Paradigm.
Right. And so what they did was they used this underrated strategy as a way to say our goal is not to hey, investors, our goal is not to get bought out by Microsoft. Our goal, like, like GitHub did, our goal is to get bought out by our community, basically. Like, we're going to exit to the community. Eventually, the community is going to own all of this and run all of this. And it's been really interesting to watch how that's unfolded over the past couple of years, their transition. I remember, Philip, you and I being at the very first stewards meetings, the very first steward council, where Kevin's like, hey, should we do this? Like, are we all in on like turning this whole thing over to the community? And we're like, yes, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And so it's been pretty inspiring to watch this happen and to see how everything now is kind of operated by the DAO. And there's really, I don't think there's anything left that is still operated by the old like for-profit organization that used to exist. But so anyways, that was a success, I would say, and that's kind of like a blueprint, and it talks about how you can do that in this book. So
It's funny,
recommend the book.
I bet a bunch of things, sort of small but important and essential things, are still run by the centralized entity.
Yeah, that would make sense, because there's IP, for example. Yeah.
Right. We know running these decentralized things is really hard, and there's certain places where it meets meat space and legal space and whatnot, where it is so much easier for the centralized company with an address and a US bank account and whatnot to do these things, where it's not easy for a decentralized DAO to do them. So I bet there's a whole bunch of small but actually quite important ways that they haven't fully escaped, and that's not criticism. I just expect it's reality.
Yeah, that's reality. So I do think it is helpful to have, and because you've got to deal with the old world, you've got to deal with like the archaic systems, and so because you have to leave one foot in there. But I like that they've that is just kind of like a perfunctory organization, and it's not like it's not earning anyone dividends. It's not it's not like making organization-wide decisions. It's just like running some stuff that you can't run otherwise. And they were able to basically pay off the investors, so that the investors get to say, okay, we're done here. And I think that's kind of the goal of every commons, is if you're going to raise money, you need a way to, at the end of the day, say, all right, investors, we've had fun. This is good. I hope you're satisfied with the return you got. And now goodbye. Like the community is taking over from here. I think it's really nice to be able to do that. And one of the other ways that they mentioned in the exit community primer is redeemable shares. So you can, from the time that you sign the term sheet with the VCs, you can have something in there that says, okay, we have this structured plan that the exit is going to be, we're going to buy back the shares that we're giving you now, and this is our target for the return that you're going to get, and then we're going to buy back the shares, and we're going to turn this back over to the community. So I think that's a really cool idea. I can't remember what exactly, like, how the arrangement was with Paradigm, how much they had pre-planned and how much they kind of just figured out later, but they were able to exit to community, which I think is really cool. So I don't think that they're beholden anymore to an investor class, which is great. So we don't have to worry about, because it's kind of weird when Gitcoin is asking for a donation. It's like, hey, help the Gitcoin fund, donate like 5% of your donation to help Gitcoin. It's kind of weird if you're thinking, wait a minute, is this 5% going to invest to like some VCs, or is this like going to a public good? So anyways, yeah, I'm glad that they were able to do that. And I put some other things in here, some things that some of these things don't really exist yet, but I would love to try them out. Like attention streams. Some of that, like a bunch of these are just like tried and true stuff, like grants and crowdfunding and bonds and stuff. And I tried to talk a little bit about when each can be used. So anyways, if you feel like checking out my blog posts and subscribing to my blog, you can do that. So I care a lot about commons. That's one of the things that I want to do with my life. Maybe my main goal, I don't know, is to have more commons in this world. I think we don't have enough commons. We've kind of forgotten that we should have commons. And so I want BrightID to be a part of that. Like kind of like it can be your part of your membership ticket into a lot of different commons. And you know, because I think it'd be cool if people can get back into governing the things, all the things that belong to all of us. So there you have it. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I just noticed that we got some money from, speaking of the Gitcoin grant round, from the Gitcoin grant. I hadn't actually been like looking.
Now, when you say we, there's several we's. So which we are we talking about? Because Aura applied, Unitap applied, no fund zone apply. I mean, and the BrightID. We were all four of those were in there. So they all got some funds. So which one are you looking at?
So yeah, I guess so. As far as humans are concerned, the we I meant was just all of us, because we're all in everything that you just mentioned. But yeah, I specifically looked at the address that we used together. You remember when you made that vanity address for it with
For no fund zone. Cool.
3 F's at the beginning.
Hold on, is it a safe vanity address? I've heard vanity
Yes,
addresses
it is.
scary,
It
scary,
is.
horrible things that should never be used.
Yes, yes, I was very careful about that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one vanity provider that did not do it in a secure way. I used vanity. I used vanity.eth.
Oh, you didn't hear about this, Evan? Yeah, so there was a long time ago, people used a vanity thing, and not maybe a year ago, it got exploited, and anything that had used that, private keys could be found.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I know. So you got to do your research.
There was some meaningful losses because it was an OG enough thing that there was some big bounces when those tokens weren't worth so much.
Damn.
Yeah, so
sucks.
yes, I did my research. I looked into this. I looked at the code, and it looked safe. So and also it had been audited by other people, unlike the one that got hacked had not really been audited.
So that's important. But yeah, that address, I basically just like, because I haven't gotten any emails from Gitcoin, so I just looked at an Etherscan, and there's a bunch of random transactions of DAI and of Ethereum.
Yeah, they've not done the matching payouts yet.
They have not.
Yeah, so I can tell you. No, they didn't tell us the matching. Yeah,
because I would like to know when that's happening.
Yeah, so the last round took a really long time to pay the matching payouts. I'm sure they don't mean for it to take as long as it did last time, but it was a significant delta in the time that the donation round ended and the matchouts were paid.
Weeks or months? Weeks or months?
Months.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, what's interesting is when I look at Etherscan, and I can actually just throw the link in here if you guys want to also quickly look at it. There's all these DAI transactions, which are clearly from the individuals who are donating, right? If you go to token transfers ERC20, you can see the incoming DAI transactions. What's interesting is there's also these internal transactions.
Yeah, so right now Gitcoin grants accept DAI and Ether as the two tokens. So the internal ones, those are all the people that contributed Ether to you.
Oh, that makes sense. Because for some reason, when I was looking at the timing, I was like, oh, it looks like we got the DAI and then a few days later they matched it with
The
Ethereum. I
same.
thought
And
that the
you'll
Ethereum,
see all of the froms are from the same address, and that's a Git coin address that like manages however that contract works. So it's not it's not all coming from one person. It comes via that
no,
contract.
it's just, I thought that the Ethereum was them matching the DAI
No,
transaction.
the matching comes as a single lump sum paid out in DAI at whatever point they get around to doing that.
But we did already get the money that was contributed directly by each person. I did not realize that. That's really cool.
You get it at the exact time that they donate it. So, I donated a little bit of tiny ETH to your project, and, I click submit, and then you got it in the next block.
Well, damn. Okay. So we have a little bit of DAI and Ethereum. Maybe we could buy some Bright tokens.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's eventually where we want to get, is that projects that want to use Bright DAO for governance buy some Bright and put it in the community pool, and then they can use Bright for governance. So they can use, let the community have a say in the proposals, which I think is awesome. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm going to do with the Aura funds that we raised. Unitap has been, with the funds that they've been raising, since they already have a team, what they've been doing up to this point is just using it to pay their team directly. But eventually they've made the pledge that they're going to use Bright DAO for governance. And so at some point they will make that transition where they'll start putting the money into Bright DAO and then taking it back out as needed. So yeah, you're welcome to do that. It's totally up to you. If you have some team needs you want to reimburse first, you can do that, and you can put whatever's left over or whatever you want back into Bright DAO, and then feel free to make some proposals to Bright DAO and get some of those tokens back.
Yeah. One reimbursement I think is you, because I think you provided the Ethereum that we used to do this in the first place, if I remember correctly.
Just put it in Bright DAO. I mean, okay, so if we're talking about like gas costs, and you want to have like a gas tab, that's something that we do for some of our DAOs, is we have a gas tab, and anyone can apply to this is for the multi-sig, because it's easier for a multi-sig to approve these little like reimbursements than it is for a DAO. A DAO shouldn't be approving a bunch of like little reimbursement things.
Yeah, expense reimbursements are a poor thing to have the full membership of a DAO vote on.
Yeah.
You should just have a subgroup of trusted people that administer a modest amount of funds that are overseen. Right. If they ever start acting badly, the DAO just stops funding them. But it's just so much more efficient to have a subgroup do stupid administrative things.
Right. So really the DAO is like, could be a solo contractor, it could be a project team, it could be like a sub DAO, like a kind of like, if you look at BrightID stars, it's like always the same team, or it could be a team that just comes in to do a certain project. Those are the types of people that should be making requests to Bright DAO. But these little one-off expenses, yeah, they should be handled elsewhere. So yeah, if we want to set up a gas tab to reimburse people for gas, we can do that. And yeah, for things like if we want to try using Bright DAO for proposals, I say, yeah, let's go for it and put some Bright back in there.
Yeah, because the last time we talked about doing a funding proposal for LearnTap, it sounded like the plan was to sell some Bright tokens first so that the funding would exist in the DAO. Do I have this correct?
Well, it's a little different than that. So what we do is we want to put more Bright into the community pool. If we buy Bright and put it into the community pool, that's what we should do with the income that we're getting from these different projects. And then the project asks for Bright back and then sells it again. So it's kind of, in a way, it sounds like, well, why are we doing that? We're buying Bright and then and putting it in, then we're getting it back out, and then we're selling it again. Like, why are we doing this? It's kind of like a circle. But creating this circle has the effect that you get to involve the community for governance. And what I'm hoping is that it creates like a snowball effect where people see, well, look, BrightDAO is doing awesome things. Look at these great things that they're building. They're building all this cool stuff, and that I support that. And so I'm going to buy some Bright tokens. I want to be involved in this. So we're hoping that it'll get like more people excited about BrightDAO if they see that BrightDAO is doing stuff. So I think that's the main reason to involve BrightDAO. Also, just to get the community to participate in. I mean, I know a lot of the community, like, people don't really love to like vote on things and read proposals. It's kind of a chore for most people, but still, just being able to say, like, let's get the community involved, let's show the community what we're doing, and let's have it right here going through the BrightDAO. I think that that's useful. So that's the main reason to do it. But you can
Oh, that
obviously
makes sense.
bypass that and just like take the fees that you get, kind of what Unitap is doing right now, and just pay your people directly. I really think that once Unitap does start using BrightDAO, they will see an uptick in interest. Once people see, like, whoa, there's a whole bunch of Unitap proposals coming through BrightDAO. That's kind of interesting. I like Unitap. That's cool. I didn't realize that there was that connection with BrightDAO. Then it kind of it raises awareness for that connection. People realize that it's using BrightDAO, and maybe now they become more interested in the Bright token. So
Okay, so yeah, so does this mean it's time for us to do a LearnTap funding proposal?
yeah, I mean, if you
Okay.
if you put some in there, do a LearnTap funding proposal. I mean, like, we can't go like hog wild yet, because I think I think you know the situation of like how much we're able. I mean, you can kind of look at what we're doing right now, like how much we're paying out in proposals, and I think we need to still stay in that range. But yes, I think that's the whole point, is we put money in, we take money out. It's like
Someone, right, for every bit of Bright that someone wants to sell, someone needs to buy.
yes.
So this whole circular thing works if there are buyers, and this could be done without any speculation whatsoever, right? Imagine it is true that, right, $5,000 comes in and buys Bright, and then $5,000 of Bright is paid out, and $5,000 of Bright is sold. That loop was even. Everything stayed totally even. So right now, the limiting factor is demand to buy Bright. If we can create demand to buy Bright, and sure, that can happen speculatively like everybody else in crypto, but even totally removing the speculative part, if we just have that much revenue coming in, then it fixes the problem, and we can pay it out. So there just needs to be buy demand for Bright, which can come from our own Bright internal action of Bright related projects. And it's tricky. We don't have a lot of that right now. There's conversations of different ideas of what can create that demand. But we're looking at a project that hopes to have regular recurring revenue, and it will immediately turn around and just use that revenue to buy Bright on a regular basis. And great, if there's a daily thing automatically buying Bright, then there's the ability to sell Bright.
Totally. Yeah.
And ideally, if the revenue exceeds the expenses, even the better, because then the price of Bright grows over time, and the war chest that BrightDAO has is bigger, so it can pay out more. Because whatever, there's 2.5 million Bright in there. Okay, that can either be worth 4 cents a Bright or $1 a Bright. It's still the same number of Bright that are there, but like how much power is contained within that. You know, someone once bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. They could probably get more than 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin now. The Bitcoin didn't change. It's still 10,000 Bitcoin. But like, what is someone willing to do in exchange for it has significantly changed.
$300 million.
We could probably buy
That's a
more
lot
than
of
2
pizza.
pizzas for that.
A lot of pizza.
I will also point out, sometimes I tell that story to people that don't know about it, and they're like, oh God, that guy. And I'm like, okay. At the time, Laszlo, the guy that did that, had the most Bitcoin of anyone in the world other than Satoshi, because he was the one that figured out how to mine Bitcoin on a GPU, and was gushing Bitcoin out because before anybody else figured out how to do that, and it was way more efficient. Satoshi, from my understanding, thought that he imagined that like at some point it would move away from CPU mining, but he thought it would take much longer. And like Laszlo kind of like cracked it. He found this way to do the SHA-256 algorithm in a way that nobody had ever done it before with a GPU that was just orders of magnitude more efficient than using a CPU.
Wow.
And because he was the innovator that just figured that out, so he blew every Bitcoin. He was as good at mining Bitcoin as everyone else in the world combined for this short period of time. So he had plenty of Bitcoin. He's fine.
Yeah, he didn't
And-
blow all his Bitcoin on pizzas.
Right. He didn't
And
blow all his Bitcoin.
and then
You know,
live
back
to
then-
regret it.
Right. The block reward was 50 Bitcoin per block. So every 10 minutes somebody was getting 50 Bitcoin.
Mhm.
So
You know, he at the time was an incredible deal. He basically paid he used something that's worthless to get 2 things that are worth something. Like at
so
the
it did
time,
have electricity costs. So he had paid, and I think I saw the numbers once. I think when you factor in the electricity, I think that it was not, he overpaid a little bit for the pizzas,
maybe.
but not substantially. And it's also funny. So what ended up happening is he had 2 Papa John's pizzas delivered to his house. What he had offered was, I just want pizza delivered to me. Let's say 2 large pizzas. Like, I'm flexible. You can make it, you can order, you can bring it. Just like, basically, I want pizza to show up at my house, and I will send Bitcoin, and pizza shows up for me to eat. And it, like, you should look up the little post about like what he actually said. And he was like totally flexible. He's like, I don't really care about toppings. He's like, I like most things. I don't like whatever anchovies or something, anchovies and broccoli or something. But he's like, basically anything else. Was totally flexible about it. And some person who was not local worked out a deal where like they called him with their credit card to like the local Papa John's and had it, they paid and had it delivered to his house. But he would have been perfectly happy for a guy down the street to cook it in his own oven and like bring it over to him. He wanted to be able to buy something in real life with this magic internet money.
Mm-hmm,
He then later, when Bitcoin, he did Bitcoin Lightning, and he bought.
Oh, wait, did he just use Bitcoin Lightning, or was he an innovator in?
No, he just used
okay,
it.
got it.
Yeah, but so like to honor Bitcoin Pizza Day, whatever, like 10 years later, he used Bitcoin Lightning, and for like 10,000 sats or something, bought pizzas.
Damn.
I love that. That's
Full
so
circle.
And
Okay.
it did it with Lightning.
So it looks like most of these proposals are about for 50 to 80,000 Bright, which is $2,000 to $3,000, which is not a whole hell of a lot. So that's something we could maybe cook up.
Yep. Give it a shot.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. So yeah.
That would definitely be helpful to everybody on the No Fun Zone team for sure as well. Very, very cool. Well, thanks for all the information, guys. I learned a lot today.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
And
And
someday ChatGPT, can summarize all these videos and then be able to answer this stuff for me.
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, we should do that. We've amassed a bunch of these videos, and we'll do another one next month. At least one more next month. So we may have Another
be
one in
really-
2 weeks.
I would be really amused to see a virtual me answering like all this BrightID stuff from these like hundreds and hundreds of hours of these videos on this topic. I think it would probably be able to do a really good job
That's true.
because I've like gone over the same thing so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's the Learn Tap, No Fun Zone, BrightID, Unitap, Twitter Space tonight.
Okay. In 4
in
hours?
4 hours
Okay.
at 7 p.m. EST.
Sounds cool. All right. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Yes, thanks everybody. Take it easy. See you later.